led by Ancient Light. Written by KOAN Sound and narrated by Jim Basto. Chapter 1: Embers from Chaos. The light from the sun cuts across the cold, barren fields of planet X7U. Jack, a retired commander, stands outside his hut on the city's outskirts, gazing towards the red giant as it descends behind the silhouette of the industrial human colony, as if being sucked into the depths of the mechanical beast. It's the one moment of the day that Jack feels the beauty of the universe, before the sun retreats behind the skyline and the city lights take over. The deep red hue reveals the inescapable reality that the sun is approaching the end of its life, a constant reminder of the imminent end to all life in this system. Jack's thoughts flash back to his former life near a younger star, full of warmth and love. The moment is fleeting. Familiar feelings of loss and isolation resurge. Since the death of his wife and the unexpected loss of his daughter years after, he is numb. No one knows exactly when the sun will die, but Jack thinks of the spectacular view that would be, and almost wishes he could live to see it. Jack gazes across the sky, thinking of the life that surrounds him. It's been thousands of years since humans arrived in this part of the galaxy, searching for precious materials to maintain their ceaseless expansion into the voids of space. Seeing the distant star, Jack's thoughts turn to the Ardor, a race of mysterious ancient beings native to the system. Little is known of them, except they have been here far longer than mankind. Although they appear to inhabit only a distant planet close to the sun, it is rumoured they once occupied the far reaches of known space. Jack takes a moment to contemplate the deep time and distance this would require. It couldn't be true, he concludes, looking back down to the city before him. That much expansion would leave a trail of waste and endless artifacts. In recent times, the human race has grown exponentially in a chaotic frenzy, finding any possible land to settle on and resources to mine. Jack sees the fumes of the city. He hates the ugly sight and despises himself for aiding humanity's colonization in his younger days. Out here, there is little that he understands. He would live further from the colony if he could, but the zones outside of the human settlements are wild and unregulated. He glances back at the red giant one last time, feeling kinship with it as they both patiently drift towards the end of their lives. The last shimmers of the sun are consumed by the city's vast metallic entrails. Jack retires to his hut, which is filled floor to ceiling with countless artifacts from the old world. Over the years, the space has become more workshop than abode. He collects these relics and feels a certain connection with them. After his daughter's death, Jack left the military and has resided here ever since. He once remembered the old world as a place of hope and possibility. He's tried going back. Too many bitter and painful memories there. A swig of his homemade liquor quickly scrubs these intrusive thoughts from his mind. Jack crosses the room to inspect an old mechanical object on his workbench that he's been attempting to repair for longer than he's willing to admit to himself. He pauses for a moment before putting it down, instead reaching back to his drink. He sits and lets the alcohol permeate his system, as he does every night. Suddenly, he sees a light blinking on his console. It's a message from the only contact he has left in the system. Chapter 2: Anchorite. Riker is halfway into a Lazarus excursion when an alarm goes off, bringing him out of the AltaCast VR network and into his apartment pod for the first time in 8 months. It takes him a couple of minutes to realize where he is, and to overcome the shock of virtual cognizance reversal. He moves his robotic arm to disconnect the wires of his neural and feeding connectors. The weight of his physical movement causes him frustration, soon realizing that he didn't calibrate the muscle atrophy aversion settings correctly. It will take some time to acclimate to real-world gravity again. The alarm going off comes from an old handheld interface he set up years ago to scan the system web for messages and recordings, anything sending out a signal that it was programmed to look for. There is an emergency broadcast being transmitted. Fellow beings, please heed our message. As the red giant dies, we must embrace Solace. The journey into the next cycle starts with acceptance. Riker is jolted back into the room by a sudden spike of adrenaline coursing through his body. He can't believe what he is hearing. A voice he hasn't heard since his final military mission 11 years ago. He pulls the message up onto his transparent display monitor and stares deeply into a set of eyes he thought he would never see again. It is unmistakably Taith, daughter of Jack. Riker instantly recalls the day he has since tried to forget. Himself, Jack, and Taith were on a joint escort mission into the nearby L7U mining belt, where Jack was captaining the L frigate. Taith was a new recruit at the time, directly reporting to Riker, who served as the ship's long-standing chief engineer. The two had a close bond. Riker had watched her grow since she was just a newborn. As they were cruising through the mining belt, a piece of space debris tore through the ship, boring a hole right next to Taith, violently sucking her from the ship in a fraction of a second. A second piece of debris struck Riker's shoulder, decimating his arm as shrapnel ripped flesh from his face and body. A containment shield activated to stop the rest of the crew being sucked into space, but it was too late for Taith. It was all over so fast. Jack had witnessed the event in horror, unable to help. Once great friends, Jack and Riker have since drifted apart, isolating themselves from the outer world in their respective ways. Riker feels a strange sense of yearning seeing her face again. He's struck by the sense of connection he feels, despite how much his memory of her has faded. She's grown up now, but still strongly resembles the child he used to love playing games with. How could she possibly be alive? Could this be a hoax? His adrenaline levels are normalized by his regulation suit. He tries to comprehend the meaning of the words, his brain still scrambled from the cognitive readjustment back to the real world, and the shock of hearing Taith's voice for the first time in over a decade. The interface clearly shows that the broadcast is being transmitted from Omicam, a small remote planet near to the sun and home to the system's native beings. Recently, some scientists have detected a very slight increase in solar activity and energy release. There are theories that it could have something to do with the Ardor, the ancient beings of the system. He replays the cryptic message. As the red giant dies, we must embrace Solace. Riker has heard similar messages before. Humans have been aware of the sun's gradual demise since their arrival here, but he knows this process takes millions of years. The system is littered with countless religions and cults, each with their own ideology, attempting to elucidate the approaching end to life here. Fearing their own mortality, many with the surplus resources required to exit the system have done so already. Riker remains robustly skeptical, easily dismissing these baseless speculations. The net is saturated with crazy theories. He stands up slowly, struggling against the weight of his cumbersome bodysuit. Seeing his vague reflection on the dirty metallic surface opposite, he barely recognizes himself, his physical appearance a distant memory. The apartment pod is almost identical to many others that exist here, designed primarily for the purpose of integrating into Altercast. The numerous colonies on planet X7U now consist of megastructures that house millions, known as Anchorites, humans integrated with various forms of technology providing nutrition, entertainment, VR, and cocktails of chemicals generating an approximation of different emotions. Since the accident, Riker has immersed himself further and further into this world, rebuilding his body into an almost completely synthetic form and only leaving Altercast for essential bionic upgrades and repairs. Like most Anchorites, Riker chooses the Altercast over the real world. Echoes of her voice continue to oscillate through his mind. "Taith," he whispers softly to himself. Fighting another wave of post-cast nausea, Riker takes a deep breath and calls his old friend. Chapter 3. Ascension. Soaring over the colony in his ex-military ship, Riker begins to feel a sense of ambivalence seeing the giant city from this perspective. He marvels at the manifold engineering achievements that sprawl below in every direction, but can't help feeling a stony detachment from all of it. The colony is bigger than he remembers. If it weren't for the faint lights revealing the outer edges of the city on the horizon, the dark sky would blend seamlessly with the city's boundless monolithic structures. He hasn't seen real light in months. Once the dwellings beneath him become sparse, Riker knows he's close. He scouts for Jack's hut in the distance. Realizing he's unable to recall the last time he made the journey to see his friend, he feels a tinge of guilt for how their lives have transpired. His mind is still racing. How could this be real? Is he still integrated into Altercast? He lands the cruiser as a silhouette of an anxious Jack appears from the hut. Jack hasn't heard from Riker in a long time. A message out of the blue has him concerned. As Riker approaches, Jack views him more clearly. Each time he sees his ex-comrade, there is more and more technology attached to him, all manner of cables and blinking diodes that barely give the impression of a man. Coats of hardened metal fortify the increasingly withering figure concealed beneath them. Fastened to his head is a large helmet with an almost opaque visor, preventing Jack from discerning half of his face. Jack can just make out the whites of his eyes. There's not much left of the man he once knew. The two men embrace, a wealth of history and shared memories binding them together. I need to show you. Riker trails off, his voice wavering very slightly. Jack is troubled. Something isn't right. They proceed inside the hut, and Jack pours them each a drink as they sit. Riker skips the small talk. He braces himself and begins to project the broadcast message onto a monitor opposite them. For a second, the figure on the screen in front of Jack completely takes a hold of him. It's almost as if he leaves his body for a moment, feeling completely suspended in time. It's her. His daughter still resembles the adolescent girl that lives in his mind's eye, although there is a softness present in her eyes that is different. Jack is frozen. He fights back the sensations swelling inside of him, his rational brain taking over to shield him from his pain. How? How is this possible? We watched her die 11 years ago. Following the fatal accident, they scanned for traces of Taith around the mining belts, finding nothing. The chances of surviving something like that are near zero. But the figure on the broadcast isn't a hallucination. It's his daughter. She's alive. After a long moment of silence, Jack overcomes his shock. Where is the broadcast coming from? Omicam, Riker replies without hesitation. Jack's eyes widen further, and a wave of confusion stirs inside him. Omicam? But there's nothing out there. He tails off, head spinning and mind ablaze. Except the Ardor. Exactly. It doesn't make sense, Riker says, before adding, but that's the source. I'm positive. Little is known of Omicam and the ancient beings. The desert planet is largely devoid of resources due to its proximity to the sun, perceived as worthless and unprofitable by mankind. Neither Jack nor Riker know of anyone who has been to Omicam. Is there more to the message? Is that it? None of this makes sense. I wish there was more. It's a miracle I picked this up. It was so long ago that I don't even remember programming the interface to scan for her voice signature. Riker replays the message, plunging Jack back into his disoriented thoughts. Taith's chest adorns a talisman fastened around her neck. The necklace exhibits a curious circular symbol that Jack doesn't recognize. The words leaving Taith's mouth barely penetrate Jack's consciousness as he gapes at her on the monitor. Her demeanor is so serene it feels almost ethereal. He sinks into his feelings, tumbling through memories of his past life. Slowly, he begins to digest the revelation. No matter how bleak his outlook, there has always been a flicker of belief that she may still be out there, a small part of him clinging on to the impossible. He starts to feel something different that is difficult to identify at first. He hasn't felt this emotion in a long time. Hope. I have to find her, Jack asserts, immediately formulating a plan in his head. His old ship had been dismantled for parts after the accident. He would need to find a new one. Jack looks up to his old friend. Riker, I have to find Taith. This is a big ask, but can I take your ship? Riker is caught off guard and has to think for a second. I'm sorry, Jack, but the ship is modified only to be piloted by me. Jack's heart sinks. Without this ship, he has no chance of reaching the source of Taith's message. There's no one else he can ask. Riker hesitates. He wants to help his friend, but he is afraid. Afraid to leave the city and the comfort of Altercast for too long. It's been years since he ventured further than the colony's outskirts. Riker sees the distressed and despondent look on his friend's face, which stirs something up inside of him. I'll come with you. Let's take my ship. Jack reacts silently, but with a look that shows his extreme gratitude. They let the quiet moment of connection linger before erupting into a plan of action. The pair prepare the final supplies and perform last-minute system checks on the ship. Sitting in the vessel's cockpit, they brace themselves for the journey ahead. Riker engages the ship's main engine, and a deep roar signals the start of the ship's ascension. Chapter 4. Voices of Dissent. The ship's thrusters give one final push before easing off as the vessel escapes planet X7U's gravitational embrace. Jack remembers the feelings of awe and terror that he associates only with entering the endless void of space. It's easy to feel exposed here. Leaving the safety of one's home isn't to be taken lightly. The vast expanse is notoriously prone to attacks by anarchic renegades. The distinct city lights below soon become a homogeneous glow. A tranquil mood falls on both of the crew members once the ship's engines quieten. Riker concentrates, inputting a series of commands into the navigation console. Plotting a course to Omicam. It's an old ship, but it still shouldn't take longer than a week with the ion thrusters. I just hope that we... Riker freezes mid-sentence as a surge of adrenaline and amphetamine cocktails are pumped into his bloodstream. The ship's sensors are integrated to his suit, transforming the spacecraft into an augmented extension of himself. The ship has sensed something. In a fraction of a second, Riker scans through the incoming data. He is alert, awake. Time is slowed. A ship is fast approaching them from the rear. Incoming projectile! Before even thinking, Riker sends commands to thrust and roll the ship. Bank left! A missile streaks past, narrowly missing them. Strapping you in, Jack! We're being attacked! Jack's seat extends and a harness is deployed to ease the burden of extremely high G-force. More alerts are sent to Riker's heads-up display, signaling a critical emergency. He looks into the rear-view camera. The unknown vessel has come out of nowhere. 2 more projectiles from behind. Riker is forced to initiate an evasive maneuver. It's not going to be enough to avoid both. One of the missiles hits, instantly breaching the ship's shield. With the shield down, Riker diverts all power to the engines. More rockets are coming now. Riker analyzes the data, realizing that they have to take a hit for a chance to escape. He calculates a move to get the enemy ship in view for a counterattack. Brace yourself! The moment before the missile hits them, Riker steers into a defensive position, shielding the core of the ship from the blast. The projectile explodes into the ship's rear left thruster. Instantly it is rendered useless, but the damage is contained. All of the ship's sensors are working overtime, generating a constant stream of data. The ship veers off course violently, but Riker had calculated this. Using the angular force generated by the missile hit, Riker nimbly rotates the spacecraft, managing to flank the attackers. Suddenly they have the aggressors in clear view for the first time. The vessel is an ugly assemblage of hijacked hardware, mashed together in such a way that it resembles a grungy cyclopean entity. Despite its speed and brawn, its unwieldiness means it lacks the agility of their smaller craft. Riker locks on to the enemy ship, aiming for the central fuel cell. Without that, their life support systems will be compromised. Wasting no time, he initiates the launch of 2 high-powered artillery rockets. It's all they have on board. Direct hit. The enemy vessel is left incapacitated, hurtling sideways and abruptly disappearing from their sights. Jack and Riker are safe. The ship has been damaged and is losing fuel. But they are alive. Chapter 5. Fragments. Jack and Riker are shaken up. Both men know they are lucky the damage was contained. We'll need to stop soon, but it could be a lot worse. Riker continues to interpret the incoming data from the ship's sensors. We're losing fuel, but we have enough to get us to the nearest exo station. We'll need to replace the rear thruster there too. It was an extremely close call. Uncommon as these types of encounters were, Jack was no stranger to run-ins with renegades back in his military days. Pirates such as these were constantly on the lookout for easy targets to scavenge parts or commandeer resources from. This attack felt different though. The aggressors seemed out to kill. Who were they? Jack bursts out, still jacked up on adrenaline from the attack. Must be anarchists, not abnormal out here. Both of them have heard stories about rogue anarchists like these. The acceleration of the dying star has led to the breakdown of social order in many parts of the system. Crime and illogical violence have become seemingly commonplace, especially outside of the major regulation zones. Uncertainty about the future of this system has created a precarious environment. The prohibitive resources required to leave the system have left many feeling trapped and forgotten, fostering an atmosphere of fear and chaos. Devoid of mythos, nihilism has become pervasive. A part of Jack sympathized with the anarchists, relating to their self-hatred and disgust with mankind's actions. Once upon a time, Taith had talked longingly of escaping the shackles of the oppressive system. She wanted to leave the military altogether and discover new meaning in different areas of the galaxy. Humanity's incessant imperialism sickened her. She was just a rebellious kid, but Jack always admired her steadfast determination and readiness to resist the path laid out for her. Once an ardent advocate of the military, Jack became disillusioned with everything about that chapter of his life after the accident. What was the meaning in any of it? Riker, on the other hand, has no regard for pirates. They are thieves, opportunists, the morally bankrupt. Since living in the system, he has observed an uneasy shift in attitudes, a trend where people bought into unfounded conspiracy with an uncomfortable willingness. Sure, the star was dying. It has been dying for millions of years. But it is as if certain degenerates use that as an excuse to justify their own malevolent agenda. As fucked up as the system is, he couldn't ever understand stooping to their level. Within hours, they reach a nearby exo station. They are relieved to arrive, feeling comforted knowing that they are safe here. Chapter 6. Liquid Levity. After docking the ship and paying for repairs, fuel, and a place to sleep, Jack and Riker enter the exo-station bar, joining the transient haulers and miners of the system. They are exhausted. The bar is dark inside, a gloomy atmosphere made brighter only by hazy fluorescent tubes and rusty light panels. Around them is a rowdy babble of bitter speech and drunken statements. They sit and order 2 strong drinks, absorbing bits and pieces of the surrounding conversation. A drunk and rugged-looking man sitting next to Jack observes the two of them with mild curiosity and amusement. They don't look like they belong here. So, what brings you through? Riker eyes the man carefully before replying. We're traveling to Omicam. The man chuckles to himself, not taking them entirely seriously and clearly entertained by the response. Omicam, eh? Not sure what you'll find there, except for a bunch of primitives praying to the sun. Sounds like most people are leaving that place anyway. Seems to me like you're headed the wrong way. You mean there are people living there? Jack asks keenly. Not really listening until this point, suddenly the man has his full attention. Only people who have nothing better to do. Not sure what the Ards have to offer except a pile of dusty rocks. Folk that visit there come back spouting all sorts of rubbish across the system. It's all a pack of lies and deceit. The man tips his head back to finish his drink, before rising from his stool and stumbling out of the bar, continuing to drunkenly ramble to himself. The pair are left to absorb the information. Jack doesn't know what to believe. What if this man is right? Are there really people living on Omicam? Is it possible Taith is there too? Why would she be there? How did she survive? The questions spin in his mind until the anxiety overwhelms him. He downs the remainder of his drink and lets the chemicals dull his chaotic thoughts. They order a second round, and Jack finds a brief moment of peace and levity as he drinks with his old friend. Drunkenly, they recount stories of previous missions together. They had met in military training when they were both young men, and had shared a great deal since then. Riker had practically constituted a second parent to Taith after Jack's wife had died. Despite the fact the two men seldom see each other nowadays, a wealth of time and experience has fostered a deep and unspoken bond between them. Riker adjusts the enzyme metabolism settings on his bodysuit, allowing the effects of the alcohol to wash over him. The pair drift into a hazy comfort. The neon lights swirl increasingly through the night until they fade to black. Chapter 7. Interrogate. Still bleary-eyed, the pair hastily pack their belongings in preparation to leave the exo-station. Since seeing the broadcast message, Jack has barely slept. As Jack and Riker head towards the main dock, ready to depart, something catches Jack's eye. They see a man and a woman walking past them, both wearing plain and unremarkable robes. The woman is wearing a talisman around her neck, which looks as if it's made from a smooth stone. But that's not the reason it's caught his eye. The symbol on the talisman is the same symbol that Taith was wearing on her necklace in the message. Jack stops in his tracks, fixated on the symbol. Without thinking, he rushes over to them and points at the necklace while blurting out, "Where did you get that?" The couple look taken aback. It's an Ardor symbol," the woman says hesitantly, with a somewhat frightened look on her face. Jack notices her defensive body language and realizes he should have approached the couple with less intensity. He takes a deep breath, trying to relax into a more inviting stance. "I'm sorry. I'm looking for my daughter. I've seen that symbol in a broadcast. Please, what can you tell me about it?" The couple seem to relax a little, but remain cautious and deliberate with their answers. "We've come from Omicam, where I was given this talisman," the woman responds. Jack's heart skips a beat. "Omicam? I think my daughter might be there." Jack is visibly distraught. Riker produces his handheld interface and plays the couple the broadcast message. Within seconds, the looks on the couple's faces change to recognition and surprise. "This is your daughter?" the woman asks, taken aback and now looking up at Jack. "Yes. I haven't seen her in over a decade. I thought she was dead." "We know her." The man speaks softly for the first time. He has a subtle conviction to his tone, and his calmly assured response sends another jolt through Jack. "What? So she's alive?" "Absolutely. We were with her just a few weeks ago. We were helping the Ardor. That's why we have this medallion." Jack is dumbfounded. It's too much for him to believe. How could any of this be? Riker is overwhelmed too, finding it hard to process that these very people before him could have seen the young girl he saw sucked into the depths of space all those years ago. "The Ardor? I don't understand." "Yes, they aren't anything like the primitives that most people believe. They are ancient and evolved in ways far beyond our understanding. We have been living alongside them on Omakam, learning from them and trying to understand their collective pain. This is what your daughter is doing. She has been helping them. Riker is bewildered, trying to make sense of this information. As far as Riker knows, Omakam is devoid of anything. No advanced technology, no artificial structures. The natives don't seem to do anything, and certainly don't seem to be an advanced species of any kind. What would they need help with? Riker asks, his tone containing a hint of doubt. The woman hesitates, trying to find the words to respond. She is helping them to die. Their son is dying. The Ardor are deeply connected to it. Riker is uncomfortable, not accustomed to his own rigid beliefs being confronted like this. His body language inadvertently exposes his skepticism. It is difficult to comprehend, I know, the man says. If you go to Omakam and find your daughter, it will become clear. The woman looks at her partner with a deeply concerned expression before turning back to Riker. You must understand that if you go, you will not come back. There is very little time before the death of the Red Giant. We stayed with them as long as we could, but it's now time for us to leave. We are only visitors here. We must return to the rest of our family in System 49L, before the end. I'm so sorry to be the bearer of this news, but please take what we say seriously. Riker is struggling to accept this revelation. The sun is still millions of years from death. Surely this is the message of a cult. Jack is stunned, unsure of what to think, except for the fact that he may actually have a chance to see his daughter again. The couple depart in a hurry, leaving Jack and Riker to prepare their next move. They soon take off from the station with a mix of trepidation and delirium. Chapter 8. Kindred Void. 2 days after leaving the Exo station, the two shipmates sit silently in the cockpit whilst the ship cruises at full velocity towards their destination. Neither of them are entirely conscious. Jack is in an alcohol-induced slumber. Booze is the only thing that helps him sleep and forget. Riker is integrated with Dreamsphere, a segment of Altercast designed to induce a dreamlike state that leverages old memories whilst injecting new role-playing elements. They've barely said a word to each other since leaving the station, both men retreating into their own form of escapism. The ship's console makes a sound, indicating the halfway point of their journey. Jack becomes conscious. Rubbing his eyes, he looks out into space and sees the view of a nearby planet against an infinite black backdrop. For a moment, the view makes him forget the feeling of alcohol withdrawal and dehydration. It's sublime. Impulsively, he kicks Riker's chair to pull him out of the Dreamsphere. "What is it?" asks Riker, disoriented. Jack motions to the ship's aperture window. They both stare silently for a while, marveling at the sight before them. To their left is a colossal planet, its atmosphere dancing and shimmering in hazy response to the sun's rays. "I've missed this," Jack says to himself wistfully. Since he lost Taith, he's avoided the terrifying vastness of space at all costs. But experiencing the magnificence of the endless void again reminds him of the beauty he used to feel, out there in the open. The inexorable image of his daughter being sucked from the ship flashes before his mind's eye. Jack shudders, numb from the memory's persistent intrusion. He reaches for another bottle, taking a sip before passing it to Riker. They reflect on what they heard at the Exo station. Is it possible? What they told us about the sun dying? Riker is conflicted. His usually steadfast outlook is being eroded. A state of uncharacteristic contemplation is causing him to question himself and his innermost beliefs. Surely the sun isn't about to end, but if Taith is really alive, what else could be true? Deep down, he knows that the life he has been living is hollow. A wave of shame washes over him. All of the time he has spent integrated, what has it really meant? True, it's less painful than living in the real world, but a part of him longs for a deeper purpose. Thoughts and feelings of existential angst are easily avoidable in Altercast. "I don't know," replies Jack honestly, his tone quiet and introspective. "All of the rumors. I always thought they were crazy," Riker continues. "But it seems like something is happening. Something big." Jack's mind wanders, recalling memories from life before the disaster. The glimmer of hope that he might see Taith again takes him back to this time. Everything then was so full of meaning. There was such an abundance of optimism. This feeling has been distant for a long time, but Jack can sense this foreign emotion growing slowly nearer. He is being drawn to it. He ruminates over all the things that he would say to his daughter if he saw her again, all the things he would share with her, all his regrets and pain. How that one moment would mean so much. Taith had never wanted to work in the military. She loathed everything it stood for. He should have listened to her. Jack finally slips into a deep sleep. A couple more days go by. The proximity of Omicam to the sun leads their voyage almost directly towards the system's star. The constant sunlight renders time irrelevant. Neither Jack nor Riker have travelled this close to the centre of the system before. The console tells the crew that they're on their final stretch of their journey. Riker notices a bright dot at the centre of their field of view, glistening vibrantly in the blanket of darkness before them. It's so small that it almost doesn't register, but both men know that this is it. Omicam is close now. "Jack, we're almost there." Chapter 9. Temple of Fervor. They've landed near to the source of the broadcast message. The landscape surrounding them is vast. There are no signs of mankind here. The desert environment feels strangely mystical. Dozens of huge rock columns, all unusual shapes and sizes, tower over them. They have an almost supernatural veneer to them, their once jagged and chaotic faces now worn down and celestially sculpted by the winds of time. Jack and Riker step out of the ship, noticing the gravity of the new planet. The sun is low on the horizon, but still shines fiercely, casting long shadows on the grainy rock beneath them. Ahead, they see a grand entrance, naturally carved into the side of a towering cliff. Riker reaches for his handheld interface to check the coordinates of the broadcast again. The source of the message is coming from within the cliff. He signals towards the opening, and the two men walk towards it. As their eyes adjust to the dimmed light inside, they can begin to make out monumental caverns surrounding them in all directions. Smooth rock formations emerge from the ground and grow up as high as the roof, each with a meticulous design that appears too exact to be entirely natural. Jack can feel something here that he can't grasp. They continue to walk deeper into the caverns. As the natural light from the entrance gradually fades away, it is replaced by a narrow beam of sunlight pouring in from a large hole in the cavern's ceiling. Towards the center of the cave is a rocky altar, brightly shrouded by the piercing beam of light. Jack and Riker slowly approach the altar. It feels sacred here. There is a purity to this place that resembles a temple. Without notice, something happens that neither man can explain. As they reach the altar, some sort of being, formed of heat and light, suddenly appears out of nothing. A flame-like figure erupts above the altar, the shape towering over them in a spiral, its form morphing constantly, like a mirage dancing in the sky. Subtle electric blue tones underpin its incandescent extremities. As it moves, it leaves a trail of ephemeral particles that refract its own effusive light. An immense heat is emitted that holds them in a fervorous embrace. The feeling is instinctive and unbelievably powerful. It is enthralling. This thing is not like anything either man has seen before. It shimmers in a way that is entrancing, absorbing and reflecting light in exquisite cascading patterns. Jack becomes immediately hypnotized by the way it shapeshifts and glistens. He knows at once what this thing is. It's one of them. The Ardor, Jack murmurs, transfixed by the being. There is an ecstatic and primordial warmth radiating from the flame-like entity. The fluctuations in heat are so precise that they conjure inconceivably striking thoughts and emotion. The being is speaking to him, and somehow he understands. My daughter, is she here? Before he finishes his question, Jack feels an intense rush of pressure and heat throughout his entire body, sending him into a deep dreamlike state. It dawns on Jack, these beings communicate through heat. The profound connection with their son goes beyond merely the physical. He sees a flash of what looks like a congregation of the Ardor and humans. The being is showing him his daughter at a site nearby. She's close. He can sense everything that the entity is communicating with him. What is this place? Riker looks on, bewildered. His suit can detect the fluctuations in temperature, but he can't understand what Jack is experiencing. Streams of data analyzing the shape and heat signature of the flame are generated, his bodysuit attempting to interpret and decipher this strange form. It's useless here. He has never seen anything like this. The being emits another lustrous glimmer, captivating Jack entirely. It tells Jack that the gathering of Ardor and humans is a ceremonial site, and that they are there to prepare for the end of their species. Taith is there willingly, and there is still time to see her. With a final gleaming flicker, the being slowly begins to disintegrate. The intense heat fluctuations cease, and Jack is returned to his body. Jack understands the truth now. Why Taith is here. Everything. The end is imminent. Chapter 10. Exigence. They leave the cavern hastily. Jack seems possessed by an immaterial force, gripped by the vision of his daughter. What happened back there? Riker shouts ahead to Jack, trying to keep up as they race back to the ship. Taith is close. I saw her. It showed me. How? I don't understand. We have to hurry. They board the ship and take off almost at once. That way, Jack commands, pointing beyond a set of distinct rock formations in the far distance. He can feel exactly where she is. Fragmented thoughts are racing through their heads. Riker is at a loss, trying to make sense of what he witnessed in the cavern moments ago. The heat from that thing. It seemed calculated, like it was launching spears of heat at us. How did you understand what it was trying to say? I don't know. I just felt it. His body's sense memory of the experience feels indelible, like tendrils of heat coursing through him. It triggered memories I've never had. Memories of their race and this place. You didn't feel anything? Riker is quiet. He shakes his head and looks down at his bionic arms and torso. He is unable to remember what it truly feels like to sense the elements. So Taith is nearby? Riker asks. Yes. The rest of the Ardor are gathering nearby, and Taith is with them. But why is she here? Jack takes a deep breath before continuing. It told me that the message is true. The sun is dying, and they are perishing with it. They seem connected to it in some extremely significant way. There was an intensely deep melancholy in how it communicated with me. Riker stares in disbelief, his mind reflexively erecting barriers of denial. He looks out of the ship's aperture window, observing a landscape of arid terrain sweeping beneath. He studies the sun. His senses examine the environment and convert the data into a conclusion that he is wholeheartedly attached to. The red giant is alive and well. That can't be true, Jack. You can't see what I'm seeing, but I promise you that that time is nowhere near. We'll find Taith. It's going to be alright. Jack hardly hears his friend's reassurance, instead fervently scanning the horizon for the sight he saw in the vision. They haven't been flying for long when the two men see something approaching in the distance. There appears to be a large circular clearing amidst the jagged rocky terrain. As they close in, they see a huge rock formation in the center, which has a sculpted quality to it. They can make out an amorphous array of entities surrounding the sculpture, slowly swirling in and out of one another. It has the same glowing bluish hue to it that they saw in the cave. It's the Ardor. The ship lands at the edge of the clearing. Jack grabs his binoculars and immediately rushes out of the ship. He fixes his gaze to the gathering and confirms what he thought he'd seen. It looks as if hundreds of these ancient beings are gathered around the rocky formation, with a few dozen humans spread out amongst them. "I see them too," says Riker, advancing from behind. The two old friends observe each other briefly, sharing a moment of silent nerves and anxious unease before beginning the approach towards the gathering on foot. Chapter 11. Led by Ancient Light. Jack leads the approach towards the congregation of beings. Riker follows closely, all the while his bodysuit attempting to perform real-time analysis of what it can see ahead. There are thousands of fluctuating heat signatures and strange, flowing energies being emitted from the structure in the middle of the gathering. His absorption into the stream of new information causes a surprise when he suddenly notices they have reached one of the Ardor. Jack walks up to the being slowly. Unsure what to do, Riker watches cautiously as the being sends a barrage of heat towards his friend. Jack's eyes are closed. He looks enraptured as he absorbs the being's engulfing heat. When the exchange has finished, Jack turns abruptly and runs past Riker. "She's here! She's right over there!" Jack shouts in amazement and trembling incredulity as he points towards a group of Ardor and humans at the far end of the gathering. "Follow me!" Riker adjusts his visor to zoom into the group. He can make out a number of humans, all sat in a similar meditative posture. Could she really be here? Jack is sprinting towards the group now. He doesn't look back, unfaltering in his conviction. Riker is left to follow. But Riker doesn't run with his friend. Instead, he stands frozen as the same entity begins to move towards him. Riker takes a step back warily, but the being continues to glide towards him. He is spellbound and stops in his tracks. The being slows in front of him and extends its flame-like form to create an elemental arm, reaching out towards Riker in an enfolding gesture. His senses go haywire, sending him a cascade of contradictions. Amidst the chaos of incoming data, he senses something strange. Something outside the normal influx of information. As the being moves its elemental extension towards his chest module, he feels a deep yearning for something visceral, something long forgotten. Without understanding why, Riker reaches towards his chest, turning off his heads-up display and sensor display modules. Instantly, the noise subdues. He's left with a dizzy sense of relief as his suit stops sending alerts to his heads-up display and chemical system. He takes off his visor, letting the natural sunlight flood into his eyes. There is an acute pain for a few moments before his eyes adjust to the vibrance of his surroundings. The being shifts towards his arm, almost as if it's trying to pierce his forearm plate. Riker instinctively reaches towards his arm and strips off the tech-infused armor, dropping it to the floor. The being moves closer again. He stares wide-eyed at his naked and withered forearm, before looking upon the being in wonder and fascination. A spear of nostalgic warmth penetrates his arm and sends him into a waking dream, filled with earthy tones and visions of his younger self. He is transported into a state of blissful ecstasy. This is nothing like the dream sphere. Riker gradually becomes conscious again, a sense of profuse lucidity arising from this feeling of warm acceptance and kinship. The ancient being retracts its extended form, retreating slightly. He drops to his knees, overwhelmed by a torrent of suppressed emotions. He looks towards his arm, and tears start filling his eyes. He kneels there for a moment, noticing the tears dripping onto his leg plates. He looks up at the being once more, as it emanates a comforting glow, and he feels that sense of yearning again, this time with more understanding. He stands back up and starts to strip off the rest of his armor plates. One by one, he removes each piece, tearing off the electronic sensors and circuits encompassing his body. With each piece detached, the warmth of his surroundings grows. As the barriers to organic sensation are removed, the subtle language of the Ardor becomes clearer. He is welcomed into their tender embrace. With only his heart support remaining, he stands in warm bliss, feeling the heat of the desert air brush past his skin. He lets his surroundings soak into his mind and body. He feels the absence of his suit, the lack of senses telling him what to feel. His sudden awareness of the separation from his suit triggers a pang of fear. It has been so long since he has felt for himself. This anxiety soon fades away as other beings approach him, offering images of their collective past and way of life, deeply connected to this planet and their sun. Riker can feel their ancient lifespan, standing in epic awe and deep reverence of being so evolved. He understands now. He has awakened. Chapter 12. Embrace. Jack runs past several clusters of the Ardor, drawing closer to the humans he was pointing to. He slows to a stride as he begins to see them in more detail. A group of 3 humans kneel in meditation amongst a group of the ancient beings. Jack stops, a few meters from them, his heart pounding. He is only subliminally aware of his dizziness and nausea. "Taith? Is that you?" A woman from the group slowly looks up, and her eyes widen in astonishment. There is a moment of silence as the two stare at each other. The woman stands and takes a step forward. "Dad?" She recognizes the man before her, but there is a deep sadness in his eyes. He looks a shadow of his former self, his rugged confidence and geniality replaced by a withered exterior and forlorn expression. She pauses for a moment longer before running over to him. He meets her with a strong embrace. They hold tightly for a while before pulling away to look at one another, both unable to speak through their tears. They try to find words, but succumb to their emotions with tearful smiles. Taith is the first to speak. I can't believe you're here. Dad, I thought you were dead. How did you find me?" "I saw your message, Taith. I came as soon as I saw it. I thought you had died too." "I almost did. My suit held together just long enough to be picked up by scavengers. I was in a bad way. They saved my life by bringing me here. But for the longest time, I was so lost without you. I didn't know what to do or how to live anymore. Everything that meant anything was gone from my life. It was a really dark time for me, Dad." "I felt exactly the same, Taith. I've been so numb since I lost you. Without this place, I'm not sure I could have held on." Taith motions to the ancient beings. "The Ardor saved my mind, Dad. It's so hard to explain, but they are so much older than we think. What they can do, what they know is..." "I know, Taith. They communicated with me. They told me the sun is near its end. We have to leave the system." Taith pauses for a moment. Holding back more tears, she begins to explain to her father. "It's too late, Dad. We tried to warn others for so long. The Ardor have evolved a connection to the sun far beyond anything we know. They communicate and draw energy from it directly. They are connected to it spiritually in a way that we can barely begin to understand. The death of the sun is a slow and painful process for them. They are undergoing a deep collective depression. We have been helping them through all of this. All they need is to be felt, to be heard, for their stories to be shared. They have so much to teach, and we have so much to learn. But, Taith, if it is ending, why did you stay here? Jack trembles through his teary questioning. I've come to love them, Dad. I was so lost for years, even before the accident. I know you felt it too. The meaningless of it all. Why did we even come to this system in the first place? Why were we building those hideous colonies? For who? Jack breaks down and falls into her arms. I'm so sorry, Taith. I shouldn't have brought you here. You were right. Taith pulls away slightly to look into her father's eyes, reassuring him with her gaze. It's okay, Dad. This place has taught me so much. These years have been the most meaningful of my entire life. The Ardor have given me a sense of purpose that I never even knew was possible. I wish I could have shared it all with you, Dad. If I'd known you were alive, I would have come to meet you, but I'm so glad I found this place. Dad, we are here for them, and they are here for us. The end is not meaningless. They hold each other lovingly for what feels like an eternity. From the corner of her eye, Taith sees a figure approaching them, partially silhouetted by the looming sun. She looks up to see a one-armed, almost naked man. He looks weak, and his skin is pale and riddled with scars, but there is a stillness in his face that she recognizes. Jack turns around to make out the figure walking towards them. The man slowly raises his only arm, stopping for a moment and gesturing at them openly. He speaks quietly, but she immediately recognizes his voice. Taith knows this man. Riker. Chapter 13. Solace of the Red Giant. The three savour each other's company for as long as they can, huddled together at the edge of a nearby cliff overlooking the giant structure below them. Jack reflects on his life, still finding it hard to believe these could be his final moments. The anxiety of the situation is hard for him to reconcile, but he doesn't want to dull what little time he has left. Instead, he defiantly directs his attention to his daughter and friend, whose presence immediately fill him with comfort and serenity. They watch as more and more of the Ardor move closer to the central monument. What is that structure? Riker asks. It's what connects them to the sun. Through unthinkably deep time, they've developed a codependency with it. Somehow they've been able to slow our sun's death for millions of years. They've saved us for all of this time, but it's too much for them to hold on to now. Riker marvels at the primeval technology, and with eager fascination encourages Taith to share more of the Ardor and their deep knowledge. The beings showed her visions of travelling deep into the cosmos as stardust, beginning the life cycle anew. She learned a new way of life, grounded in ancient ways, connected to the origins of culture and communication. She saw visions of their long-forgotten past, their ancestors spread across the depths of the whole universe, and how over time they evolved to be introspective, accepting their place in the cycle of the sun. Their teachings led her to a meditative existence, finding inward peace amongst the chaos of the universe. There is beauty and meaning in everything, even their suffering. They have made peace with death and accepted their end as the start of another journey. All of the Ardor are clustered around the monument now, creating a scintillating heat mirage surrounding them. It is nearly time. They watch as the leader of the ancient race moves into a cave-like opening in the obelisk. Jack, Taith, and Riker hold hands, preparing for the imminent supernova. They can feel it coming and stay close together, remaining present in this final quiet moment, whilst all wishing they had longer. A strange acceptance falls over Jack as he realizes there is nowhere else in the world he wants to be. A monumental expansion of light unfolds before them. A flash of intense white fills the sky, followed by a colossal explosion of bright yellow and amber. Shock waves of glowing energy emanate outwards from the center of the sun like a sea wave of seismic origin. The three of them clutch each other tightly, knowing they will soon be engulfed. They stare wide-eyed as the multicolored light surges across the sky, illuminating all in front of them. The Ardor are radiated, their energy scattered to the stars. Awe and terror wash over the onlookers as they witness the epic beauty and destruction of the red giant. They bask in its radiant glow, surrendering to its immense heat. They watch as the shockwaves hit the distant horizon. They hold each other as tight as they can. Time slows for all of them as they look into each other's eyes for the last time. They share a final moment of profound connection as heat and light envelop them. They become one with the sun. The end.